Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Bible study. Today is going to be another wonderful teaching. Hope you guys were tuned in to the last few we had, even on Sabbath as well, because they're all tying in together. We need to pull the string and get the big picture, because there is a lot of meat that's been going through the sanctuary on Sabbath, on Bible studies, and a lot of things you'll hear again that Jordan had mentioned and Sherry had mentioned, and most likely will continue on Sabbath for the next how many weeks. So I want to let you all know that tonight is day number 1 of Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, head of the month of Iyar, in the year 5782, and it is day number 17th of the counting of the Omar, which is the counting of the sheaves. And it's also April 13th, 2021. That's a lot. Yet, just in that alone, we could camp out for the whole evening. Yet, I just want to put that out there, because when I started looking up all of this stuff, everybody had an argument about everything. They even argued about an argument about what this day is. It's not really that day, it's this day. Well, if you do it this way, it's actually that day. Well, if you think about it, it could be this day, yet we're going to celebrate it this day. So we just went to the basics. And if you look at it, today is right about day 1. Yes. So however you want to look at it, today is day 1, head of the month, the new moon, Rosh Chodesh, and it's the year 5782, which is significant in itself. And it is day number 17. Now the counting of the Omar is also the counting of the sheaves, and I believe it was it Jordan that had mentioned, you had mentioned about the fruits, when they're waving the fruits, what was it during Sukkot, when they were waving all the 7, which is interesting because of the fruits during this time frame that a lot of people talk about. I just went through a whole lot of stuff, and you just sit there and you just go, wow, where do you put everything? Yet there's just so much. Yet what we need to focus in is what these weeks are about. We talked about Passover, what Passover is all about, where we are right now, the sons of Issachar, which was mentioned during Sabbath, very important. We need to write that down and keep focused on that, because that is so true, not only because of the season we're in. We need to catch a hold of that, because this is what we are about. Those who have ears to hear, the heart to grasp and understand, pay attention. And I am serious about paying attention, because during this time frame, there is a lot of stuff that we need to grab a hold of. I remember I was listening to a teaching Dad was doing, and it was actually the teaching that it was Mom, Jordan, and Dad were, and it was about the prophecies, portals, and he had mentioned, and he had talked about, I wrote it down here, I'm just going to go over it. He talked about 40 days to get it right. He said, we have 40 days to get it right. And he says, I don't want to put nobody in a box, yet we have 40 days to get it right. When he said that, I went back and I looked, and what he was saying, he was talking about what the Lord just showed him at that point, and that was pulling up the tent pegs, expanding, what was it, your borders, expanding, yes, expanding your borders. And he says, we need to expand our revelation of this season. Not only back then, there was a lot there, this time and to come. Because every season we go in, it's always a cycling up. When we cycle up, because everything is in ascendancy. So this year is higher than last year, supposed to be. Next year is going to be higher than this year. It's supposed to be. We're going to learn some things to ascend in the right way, because during this time frame is when we learn these things. And so we're going to go right into it. So we're going to start out with 1 Corinthians 5. And I just added this one in because it showed me that on the way in. And we're going to start at verse 16. 2 Corinthians 5:16. You know, he says, therefore, from now on, we recognize no one according to the flesh. Even though we have known Messiah according to the flesh, yet now we know him in this way. No longer, therefore, if anyone is in Messiah, he is a new creature. The old things passed away, behold, and this is the way I've always learned it, behold, all things become new, because that was a memory verse that I've done, was all things become new. So that one always stuck with me because the Lord had showed me one time. He had read it over, read it over, read it. I read it over. I'm not for sure how many times I read it over. I read it over, let's say several times, and then he says, what does it say? It says, all things become new. And so he told me, he says, what has become new? So I says, everything has become new. And he says, what is everything? So I says, everything. So he revealed to me all the things that become new. He says there's new ways of thinking, new ways of talking, new ways of acting. It's just, your whole life is all new ways of doing things. It's not as in the old pattern of the old life. It's a new pattern that he's showing us. Yeah, and then he reminded me, there's nothing new under the sun. And I look at this. So if everything's become new and there's nothing new under the sun, what does that mean? He says it's new to you. It was never new to me. It's a revelation to you. You did not know it before, now you know it. So I appreciate that. I really appreciated it at that time, because at that time I was asking a lot of questions I didn't understand. So at that point he was showing me things so I have a better understanding. And then we're going to go to, actually we're going to hold off on the next one. That one I wanted to go to because of this season here, going through the wilderness, coming to where we need to go. This is a place that we need to get a hold of some things, learn some new patterns, some new ways of doing things. Not new to him, new to us, because we've not known him before. And during this time frame, a lot of the rabbis, and when I say rabbis, you got to take a lot of the stuff the rabbis, and you got to go and you got to focus what it says with the word, because there's a lot of stuff out there that just needs to be weeded out. So if you're doing a research and search it, make sure it's according to the word. There's a lot of things in there that are just so awesome. You know, the rabbis say this is a time of ascension. And they also say it's a time of healing, which was mentioned on Sabbath. This was a time of healing. And which is interesting, because when they talk about the healing, all across the board, 90% of the majority of them mention the same thing about Akiva. You know, about Rabbi Akiva and how the plague was stayed at that time. Was it the 33rd day of the, and remember, we're at day 17. And I say that for a reason, because our goal is to get to day 49 to day 50, because that's the day when we go to Mount Sinai and get the revelation, where they got the law. We're looking for up to that point. So how do we get to that point? And that's where we're at right now. So right now we're going to talk about the Ascension. When we were in Jerusalem, when we were in Israel and we were going to Jerusalem, they always played the song of Ascension, because we were going up to Jerusalem. So everything is always ascending up. Remember, ascending up. We're always in the ascendancy. Mom always talks about that. We're always in the ascendancy. One of the things the Holy Spirit had told me also is, like, during this time frame, we have a lot of people from all over the world who are watching us. And there's a lot of phrases that they don't understand. So he's reminding me to, when we say some things, to kind of embellish on it a little bit. Like we say Yeshua, and for a lot of people, Jesus. So it's like, okay, we call Yeshua Jesus Yeshua. You know, in ascendancy, when we're always in the ascending, we're always ascending upwards. We always have a goal. There's a cycle, and the cycle is always to send up. So when we're looking in all the way from the Old Testament to the New Testament, he was always pointing ways to get you up, to get you up. You know, next year in Jerusalem, next year in Jerusalem, next year in Jerusalem. Always reminding you, next year, you're going to be higher. Next year, to be higher. And it's like, last year, there was a lot of revelation that came forth. And I'm gleaning a lot of it. Back then, it was like, it was a lot, absolutely. Did I get everything? Absolutely not. Did I get a lot? Absolutely did. Yet this is a time frame for myself. I'm talking for myself. This is a time frame for me, as well as everybody else, to look at what is in this time frame for us to do. How do we ascend? What does it mean to ascend? What does it mean to move up? You know, if we were talking about work, it would be easier to understand. What does it mean to move up? That means promotion. So it's like if we look at promotion, so every year we're promoted to a better position in Him. So if we look at it that way, it gives a better picture. Yet does it give us a full picture of what He's talking about? That's why we need to keep digging into the Word. You know, and they also mention that this is the time frame where Passover connects to Shavuot. There is a connection. And the way they describe it is, it takes the two and brings them together. Yeah, if you do that, you could, and it does do that. Yet we need to focus on how the two got together. There was something in the middle that pulled them together. And that's where we're at right now. So when we come over to, we came from Passover, which is considered redemption, you know, which is from sin and death, to the unleavened bread, which is separation, you know, and I put this in, to come out from, to first fruits, which is consecration, you know, and I put this in dedications of ourselves, to Shavuot. And I put this in myself because it's power and demonstration. That's the way I see it. So, is that the way they had put it in there? No, that's the way I see it. That's what's in here for me. And I see it as that. So, and I'm not going to focus on Shavuot because that's where we're going to be going. We need to learn how to get to there first. Because there's work for us to do. Every one of us has something to do. And it's not, I cannot do it for you, I cannot do it for you, and I cannot do it for you, and I cannot do it for you. I have to do it for myself. You have to do it for yourself, you have to do it for yourself. There's things that we have to do. It's like, there's a saying, this is not church as usual. It's not anymore. Folks, it's not church as usual anymore. We have things that we need to do, and we need to get them accomplished. And the only way to get them accomplished is if we focus in what He's telling us to do right now. So, on a side note, because I'm going to throw out some things that, there was just a lot of stuff that just really ministered to me. And there's all these little one-liners that I'm going to throw out to you. You can just write them down, or you can just listen to them and hear them, because there's a lot of meat in them. I'm going to spend some time going over them again. And one is, you know, barley is considered a simple grain. And it was plentiful and the food source of the poor. It was the beginning of the harvest season. Simple. A simple grain, and it was plentiful. So it was everywhere. And they also say at the time when Yeshua was walking up and He said, look, the harvest is white for harvest. You know, and there's no one to take in the harvest. He was talking about, this is what the rabbis were saying, well, not the rabbis, excuse me. This is what they were referring to, was what He saw was the barley, because there was so much of it and it was white. When it comes into the harvest time, it's white. So on that right there, and one of the commentators I was reading, and it was a rabbi who had mentioned during the biblical times, and this is what because barley grows in almost anything. It's one of those things that grows everywhere. It's not too much that it does not grow in. So a lot of Israel was dry and arid, so it would grow in it. And a lot of areas by the Galilee, they said, was dry and arid around that area, which we look at today, because we have the big, they call the Sea of Galilee, which is, it's big. Yet on the outskirts of all that, it was dry, according to them. I was not there, so I can't say it was. So, yeah, it's interesting that it would grow just about anywhere, and it was plentiful. It was considered the grain of the poor, and it was fed to everybody. It was made for they made everything out of it. And then that's the beginning of the harvest season. Then at the end of the harvest season, It was wheat. Now, wheat was considered a luxurious grain. And this is the thing that I really, really has a lot to do where we're going and where we're at. Because it's a luxury grain, the harvest was directly tied to obedience, which I never thought about that. Because for the wheat to grow, they had to rely on God. They had to be obedient to God for the rain to come, for the right time, for the harvest. And I'll say, wow, that's powerful. Just that alone right there, I just sat there and I was thinking about that. From the plentiful to where I have to rely on Abba, Yahweh, and be obedient to what He says to do. If I'm obedient to what He says to do, the rains will come, and then the harvest will come. Yeah. And I got my note right here about, now when Dad said we had 40 days to get it right, at that time frame, it was almost around, let me see, actually no, it was before this time he said it. His next time, I think it was the second time he was talking about it, he was talking about the new moons. And it was right around this time he was talking about the new moons, because he was talking about we need to understand the new moons. There's a lot more than what we've gleaned from it. And right now, we have, Jordan, Sherry, and even Mom talking about the new moons. Pastor Donna talking about we need to get back to the basics of the new moons. The Rosh Chodesh, the head of the month, the new moon. What does this mean? What does all of this mean? Like today, it's the beginning of the cycle. We're starting, like when they were sharing about the head of the comet. Mom would always say that. Dad would always ask her, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by being the head of the comet? And she would always say, it's that point right at the very beginning, right where it just goes over. Right there is where the head of the comet is. And that's the same thing with the head of the month. It's that point right there. It's wow. It's that point. It's the beginning, and you think, because it's a high point, yet it's the beginning of the ascendancy. And when I looked at that, I was like, how can a high point be the point of ascendancy? Because you meant to go higher. Because last year, that was the high point of ascendancy. This year, this is the high point of ascendancy. Next year, this is the high point of ascendancy. It's the continuum. So when he was talking about the head of the month, the new moons and all of that stuff, we just need to be expanding on that. And we need to open it up. Open it up. We need to understand more and more of the moeds than we actually know about them. That's why, when Jordan and Sherry are sharing about it, they're going line upon line, precept upon precept. They're going right to the Hebrew word. What's the Hebrew word for? And what was happening at the time? What are the rabbis saying? And they're bringing everything in so we have a better understanding of it. And because we need to pull up the tent pegs. We need to expand our understanding of this season we're in so that we get the most of it. Every season. We need, because you look at all the moeds, they all have a fiber of the same flavor. The ascendancy of 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. You have the beginning, and then you have the fall festivals. They all have an ascendancy at different levels to go up. Yeah, in that time frame, and I have to be mindful because I'm using time frame because time is a time, yet it's a moed, which is it's an appointed time. We need to be at this place, at this time, doing certain things. And it's not, well, it's a God thing I'm going to do, or it's a good thing I'm going to do. Sherry had shared on that, It's a God thing, because it's a moed. Because we can be doing good things in these moeds and not get to where we need to be. We need to be doing God things during these moeds to get to where we need to be. So let's take a look at Matthew 4. Do this one and then throw this right in there. When you're there, stay there. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go to Matthew 4:1. Now this is the temptation of Yeshua. Then Yeshua was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he then became hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become bread." Now, interesting. He knows who he is. Yet he comes in when he's hungry. Yet what did he do? He said, because it says, he said, "It is written." Now, I want everybody to write that down. It is written. Because during this season, that's what we need to do. When the temptation comes, we need to stand and say, "It is written." It is written. And cancel it out. And that's what happened when he said. He says, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, yet on every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God," out of Yahweh. You know, and then he took them to the other place. It was one right after another. Some days you just get plummeted with temptation after temptation, and it doesn't matter what it is. Temptation is temptation. It's doing this. It is written. And saying what is written cancels what he's trying to put. And during this time, when they spent 40 years going through the wilderness to learn how to be obedient. 40 years. Yet 40 years they could have done it in how many? What, 11 days is it? 11 days is the journey. Yet it took them 40. That's a rough learning to be obedient. Yet, after that time frame, they came to the point where they went to Mount Sinai to receive. And that's where we need to be. We're not going to spend no 40 years in the wilderness. I'm not spending no 40 years in the wilderness. And I trust that nobody here wants to spend no 40 years in the wilderness because it's dry. In the wilderness, and that's a good thing to focus on too, because we have a choice. And these are the time to make right choices. And I remember, and Pastor Donna, is, our spiritual mother, would always say, "Make the right choices. Make the right choices." We all have choices to make, whether it's at work, at home, or just here during some of the ministries that go on. We all have choices. Let's make the right choices. Yeshua made the right choice. He went right to the Word and said, "It is written, you shall not tempt the Lord your God." So he made the right choice. Of course he made the right choice. I wouldn't expect him not to. We wouldn't be here talking about it if he did make right choices. And so we need to look at it this way. These choices will determine if we go to Mount Sinai or hang around in the wilderness. Actually, hang around in the wilderness longer than we need to. Or worse, which is not an option, is go back to Egypt. That is not an option. That is not an option, especially being delivered from the bondage of slavery. Yet, there will be people that do that, because if you read in Revelations where they say, "Curse God and get it over with," I can't fathom that. It doesn't, yet, there are people in bondage and sin doing that. So, if we make the right choices by applying the Word to our everyday life until it becomes a lifestyle, because that's what he's doing. It's becoming a lifestyle. Because when we're walking around, there's going to be opportunities. Yeshua, comes over. Somebody with a hand with it. What did he do? Oh my goodness. What happened to you? Not at all. He said, stretch out your hand. Be healed. And he stretched it out, and he was there. Of course, he always did it on the Sabbath. That really made people mad. Yet, we got to capture his heart, because that's the reason why we're here. We capture his heart. His heart was for the people. Abba's heart is for the people. That's why he made these provisions for us. That's why he's always in these cycles that we're in, and it's always about our relationship, because he's always trying to get intimate, more intimate with us through all of these moeds. All the time. Everyone. It's like, there's not one you can't say that he's not trying to get intimate with us. There's not one, because that's what he's doing. He's revealing himself to us and all the moeds that there are. So we need to capture his intimacy during this moed, because there's an intimacy during every moed. You know, somebody had mentioned to me that they're saying was it takes 30 days to form a habit. And I always thought about that, 30 days to form a habit. And I was like, and it's true, there's truth to it. If you do a month, and you do the same thing over and over, I mean, not just to do it, I'm going to just, for 30 days, and it's going to be a habit. No, it's not going to be a habit. You choose to change something, and in 30 days, you'll have the ability to walk it out to be a permanent change. You know, that's what Mom would say, it's a heart transformation and not behavior modification. So that's what he's trying to do. He's doing the heart change. He's circumcising the heart and putting in the word so that it can soften it up. So in 30 days, it takes to form a habit. Now if you look at it right now, so we have about 32, 33 days, depending on who you listen to and what they go by, until the remaining to actually prepare our hearts to receive the Torah. You know, the day of Pentecost, they say, Shavuot. So 32 to 33 days, that's plenty of time to form a habit of developing a relationship, an intimacy with Abba Yahweh. And I think that's an awesome thing, because during this time frame that's what he wants. Because he wants to reveal more of himself during this time. You know, the Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness before they trusted Yahweh enough to do what he told them to do. And then they went on to Sinai. That's where they went. They came to a point where obedience was good, that they could move to the next level. So no more 40 years. So for us, we're not going to spend no 40 years in the desert. You know, so we're going to spend this time frame here analyzing every day. Okay, what do I need to change? Because all things are new. So because I was delivered from the bondages of sin and death, so what's new? Okay, I'm not a slave to sin. Okay, so I know what sin is. There's nobody who does not know what sin is. Yet does anybody know what righteousness is? Does anybody know how to walk it out? This is the time frame where we learn these things, that we're able to walk it out. We'll learn more and more and how to get a deeper revelation of things. You know, when he revealed that to me about all things becoming new, that was major to me, because I never seen it like that. It was like, all things become new. So I'm there, and he says, your thinking has changed. And I'm like, oh, that's a good thing. Your speech has changed. That's a good thing. Back then, because I was a new believer, there was a lot of things that needed to change. He says the way you see things need to change. So now you see differently. I'm like, oh. You hear differently. Oh. You grasp and understand things differently. It's not the same. I'm like, oh. And so on and so on. Yeah, I look at it, and even before I started this, he had given me, he says, in your seeing, he started out, says, in your hearing, hear. And in your seeing, see. I looked at that, and I wrote it down, and I'm like, why in your hearing hear, and in your seeing see? Because in your hearing, it's not just to hear a sound. It's a hearing. And I'm go right here. I'm gonna write that. I don't even have it here. Praise the Lord. Yeah, in seeing and hearing, make sure you're hearing what it says. In hearing, hear. And see, and seeing, see. So what he reminded me of, when I'm hearing things, there's a different way to hear. And I'm going to get into it because he just showed me, because I got it down in the end, and we're going to go right to it, and it's going to open it up to as far as the hearing part. Because I'm going to focus on that, and seeing is going to be another time. So the hearing is what we need to focus on during this time. Because if it's obedience that we're attaining to walk through this time, I think we need to hear some things. Because as a parent, you don't have a child you just say nothing to and they're just obedient. No, you have to say some things to them. You know, please don't do that. Thank you. We don't say that, we say this. So they're hearing and they make the correction. So when we're hearing, there's an action involved. And that's where I'm going to focus too. So keep that in mind in your hearing. Now, in Romans 12, and this is where the Lord had brought it back again. And in Romans 12, where we talked about, because he's talking about, let's go to Romans 12. Romans 12, and we'll start at 1. Oops. Go back. Romans 12, 1. And this is Saul writing to the church of Rome. And he says, therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living holy sacrifice acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. Do not conform to this world, and the version I read before that I have on the, and its standards, I believe it's the Amplified version that says that. Yet be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what is the will of God, that is acceptable, good, and perfect. So that your mind will be renewed. And he's talking about transforming. There's a different way of thinking. You know, if you're offering your bodies as a living sacrifice, and it's not you hopping on a thing and you're becoming a sacrifice. It's an internal sacrifice because it's called obedience. Because you're turning your whole, this is the way I used to do things, and I'm turning it over to here. It's a new way of doing it. So now I'm no longer bound to this because now I'm here. I don't do that anymore. I do this. And I'm not focusing on what I've done before. When people give testimonies, what's the thing they give a testimony of? It's rarely what God has done, it's what the devil has done. It's like, I was doing this, I was doing that. It's like, no. I was here, I was blind. Now I see. What's the focus? Not that I was blind, it's that I see. Was deaf? Now I hear. It's not where I was, it's where I am now. In the garden, what did God say? Adam, where are you? He knew where he was. He wanted to know if he knew where he was, and if he is willing to make a shift. Because now he shifted from the opposite direction. Yeshua came to shift us back to where it was before. Yeah. When I had the hat up here, dropped on the ground, we need to know where we fell from so we can return to. That's what Yeshua did for us. He brought us back to where we were before. He restored the relationship between Abba Yahweh and ourselves. That intimacy is back for those who have ears to hear. So if the intimacy is back and it's always going to remain there, if I'm over here and I'm blind, how am I having a relationship? Or if I'm over here and I said, I can see, I'm having that relationship because I'm connected to what has happened, not what used to be. It's the here and now, which changes your future. Because your changes that you make today will change things that you do tomorrow and the day after. Next year at this time, you'll be a lot different than you were this year. How many people can say, I'm a lot different than I was last year? If you can't, there's still hope, because during this time frame, we can change that. We all have that choice. We make those choices to change. It's all about change. And if we can change what we're doing now that is not obedient to the Lord, we can turn things to an intimate relationship with Him and then move on into the things of Yahweh. So it becomes a lifestyle. It becomes, this is who I am. You know, Mom would say we're living billboards. We're advertising something. Are we advertising what we shouldn't? Or are we advertising the intimate relationship? Yeshua was always advertising the intimate relationship. I do nothing except for what Abba Yahweh shows me. I do nothing, absolutely nothing, except for what He shows me. So that means He didn't think about, well, I can do this, you know, and just squeeze on back. I'm right here, and this is what I'm doing. He told me to do, I'm obedient, and I'm going to do it. This is the way it is. I'm going to make these decisions, and this is, because you got to remember, He was all the time reading the Word. This is who I am. 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 That's what we should be doing. This is who I am. That's what our confessions are. This is who I am. The Word says this is who I am. So it says who I am. I am. I'm not who they say I am, and I'm not who they say I am. I am who He says I am. And what does He say I am? I am a son of the Most High. You're a son of the Most High. You're a daughter of the Most High. You know. And how do we become sons and daughters of the Most High? A good example is when Yeshua said, here's my brother, here's my sister, here's my mother. These, because He said, who are they? Those are the ones who do the will of the Father. Those are the ones who are my mother, brothers and sisters. Those are the family. That's the intimacy. Family is intimacy. There's no distance in family. There shouldn't be. There should be a closeness, because there's a power. There's a power within that. You know, you look at Gideon's army. It was a small army. They weeded out. And I don't want to say weeded out, because that's not a good word to use. Those who did not want to partake, they went over here. Those who didn't want to partake in the next level, they were over here. In the end, they all had a share. None of them were just like, you can't be part of us. You can't be part of us. What He was focused is the ones who will be prepared to do what needed to be prepared. Ones that needed to be obedient for that time frame. Because you need to do this. That's why when they're drinking the water, they had to look. If they drank the water like that, slurped, and couldn't see what they were doing, the enemy would come in and they would be devastated. So they were looking for peculiar people. Doesn't that sound familiar? We are peculiar people. Not Paul, it was Peter who wrote that we are peculiar people in the book of Peter. And we are very peculiar. And you are very peculiar because He's called you to be a peculiar people. In this time, in this day, we all are peculiar people for such a time as this. And we started with Passover, now we're counting the Omar. Our goal is to connect by obedience ourselves to Shavuot, which is at the Mount Sinai, giving of Torah, sundown on May the 16th, which is right at that time frame. May the 16th. Ooh, wow. I just thought about that. That is interesting. Now it reminds me of the wise virgins. Now if you look at the wise virgins, what did they have? They had a lamp with oil in it, and they had extra oil because they needed the extra oil for the journey, because they were waiting for the bridegroom to come. So if you have the extra oil and you keep your wick trim and burning, you won't be wasting the oil. So that's a lesson right there. So trim the wick, keep it burning. You have your extra oil and you're waiting. They were obedient to get the oil and keep their wicks trimmed and burning because the bridegroom was going to come, and they waited. Now the foolish virgins waited to the last minute, 11:59 as some people would say, and decided to go get some oil. There was no oil for them to have, so they were not prepared to wait. So they didn't have enough oil to wait up for the bridegroom. Not us. We have the oil. We have plenty of oil, and we're going to be ready for when the bridegroom does come. And I wanted to look at this. You know, this is a passage month to the Revelation month. So, passage month, and then the month that's to come is the Revelation month. And we are connecting the two during this time by being obedient. We connect the two. We're not just going from here and jumping over there. There's a process to go in between. And that's what we need to do. We need to focus on that process right there. And I wanted to read Deuteronomy 6. This is familiar to a lot of people. And we're going to start at verse 3. And I wanted to start at verse 3 because verse 4 is the Shema. And everybody says Shema Israel, and they say it with gusto. Yet there's a lot of power in that. They say, I believe they say it twice a day, when they first get up and before they go to sleep. And I want to say the first one on 3 to get the flavor of what he's really pulling in here. O Israel, you should listen and be careful to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, just as the Lord, the God of your fathers, had promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Otherwise, hear and obey. Now, where did we hear that? Our spiritual mom used to always say, hear, obey. And it's a truth, because if you do a study on what the Shema is, that hear word means hear, obey. It's one word with the two meanings. The two meanings, they don't separate. You can't separate. It's like, I see that, or I hear and I accept it because I'm doing something about it. It's hear and obey. There's an action involved. And we go to verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. These words which I am commanding you, which I am commanding you today, shall be on your heart. That's his ultimate goal, to put it on your heart. More in your heart. In the heart, because that's why he circumcised the heart, so that the word would have a place to stay. Because before our hearts were hardened, it had to be softened. So it is softened, and now he goes and says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. These words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart. Because on your heart, in your heart. Because if you do that, there is no temptation that's going to take you. Because you're going to look at it. Because you're going to know the Lord your God is one. It's like, say it in Hebrew, it's got an oomph to it. It just like draws you right into it. Because the Lord your God is one. Hear, O Israel, it's the Shema. Hear, obey. Hear, obey. One word. And it's like, when I write it down, I write hear, obey, and it's one word. When I write it down. It's not hear, slash, or backslash. It's hear, obey. So when it comes to the word, what he reveals to me as a revelation is a hear and obey. Now, when he had said to me, there's a new way of hearing. You know, in your hearing, hear. This is what he was telling me about. The revelation he gave me was Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. The Lord is one. And it's all in the heart. No matter what. Yeshua did the same thing. He walked through the wilderness. He took the word and he said, it is written. He became one with the word. And the word became one with him. He became the word. And it canceled out the debt of sin. It canceled it. The enemy could not touch him. He could not be touched. Because it is written. It is written. It is written. And hold to it. It is written. I hold to what is written. So during this season, remember what is written in the Lamb's Book of Life about you. So that you walk through this season being obedient and a big revelation of what he's about to do in your life coming up. You know, the land that's flowing with milk and honey. Just think of the change that will happen at this time frame when we apply this to our hearts and we take it and we do it. Hear, obey. And then when it comes to the end of this season, when we come up to Mount Sinai, day of Shavuot, and it's going to be an awesome time. I see a lot of things in that. And I'm looking forward to the girls because I know they got a lot of stuff to just throw out there on that. And I'm looking forward to it. Because as I read all this stuff, I'm sitting there, I'm reading it, and I'm reading it, and I'm reading it. I'm like, there is just so much in this that, you know, it's like when they wrote the book and it said, there's so much that he has done that it was too much to write. It's like, there's just so much in there, just too much to write it on paper and try to, yet we got to grab some of it. Grab as much as we can because there is a lot to grab. And I want everybody to transition themselves to receive. Walk it out And then plan on being there on Shabbat, because it's going to be a good time. I'm expecting some great things to happen during that time. Yet, expect it. Yet during this time frame, let's do what we need to do. You know, we need to do something. I remember Dad said that they give you two choices of two Passovers. In case you messed up once, he says, you have another option to do it. But Yahweh always gives you a second chance. That's what all these festivals are for. To get it right. The head of the month is to start all over again. Every month. That's why I believe that Mom is saying, and the girls are saying, that we need to go back to the basics on things. Because I think we kind of slipped a little bit, and we're starting to grab a hold of some things again, and we're going back to it. You know, it was like that song, I'm not recalling, it's What We Made of It, the worship song. We thought worship was this way. Forgive us, Lord, because it's this way. You know, it's such an awesome story. You know, Lord, this is the way we thought the festivals were. Yet it's this way. Forgive us for thinking like this. And then we grab a hold of the truth and we move on. We've ascended up to a higher level. Next year, we're going to do the same thing. There's going to be things we're going to say, oh, this is what it is. Added another layer of truth to it that we didn't realize before. It's not new to him, it's new to us. That's why it's called the revelation, because he's revealing it to us. Praise the Lord. So Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, obey. One word. It really is one word. Do your study and you'll find out. It's one word. Shalom. Hope to see you again on next Tuesday. Or actually, we'll see you on Sabbath. Then we'll see you on Tuesday.